Hey, boys and girls, today's mystery is looking at the question, what's the biggest number?
Hi, it's Doug. What's the most number of birthday candles you've ever seen on someone's birthday cake? Whoa, that's a lot of candles there. Now, this is my grandpa. His name is Lou. In just 2 years, he's going to turn 100 years old. It's amazing. This year, instead of having to blow out 98 candles, he decided to have 2 candles to remind him of how many birthdays he's got until he hits the big 100. Someone named Avon has a question about numbers. Let's give Avon a call now.
Hi, Doug.
Hi, Avon.
I have a question for you. What's the biggest number?
That's a great question.
When I was in kindergarten, I remember each morning my teacher, Mrs. Schlavine, would write a number on a piece of paper that she'd cut out like a teddy bear. Then she'd tape it up on the wall. And so for each day of school, we'd count a new number. 1 on the first day of school, 2 on the second day of school, and so on. By the middle of the school year, those numbers were getting pretty high. 97, 98, 99. And that's when we hit the 100th day of school. Wow, 100. I remember thinking, what a huge number that is. I'd never counted 100 of anything before. That was my first time. Now, maybe that's because when we're really young, it doesn't seem like there are a lot of things in your life that are 100 of anything. You're definitely still a long way from being 100 years old. And oh my gosh, can you imagine if you found $100? Woo, that'd be amazing to find. But you know what? There are 100 of some things around you. Even if you found $1 and you took it to the bank, that's worth 100 pennies. So you could walk out of the bank with 100 pennies. But as you might know, there are numbers even bigger than 100, like the number 1,000, which looks like this. That's the number you get if you count to 100 10 times. There are things in your life that are definitely 1,000. Like if you go to a really big movie theater, there might be 1,000 seats in the theater. Or if you're more than 3 years old, congratulations. Give yourself a pat on the back because you've been alive for more than 1,000 days. Or it's thought that most people speak about 1,000 words for every hour that they're awake and talking. So you've probably said 1,000 words already today. Okay, but there are still way bigger numbers than 1,000. Now, before I say anything more, I'm curious. What's the biggest number you've heard of? Go ahead right now and tell someone near you.
Okay, so think to yourself or share with someone around you, what do you think the biggest number is or the biggest number you've ever heard?
Well, you might have said a few different things. Maybe you said 1,000,000, 1,billion, 1,trillion. Or here's another one you might have heard someone talk about before. Infinity. Ooh, infinity. Is infinity the biggest number? Well, no, it's not. Now, don't get me wrong. Infinity is a word. But there's something about this word, infinity, that causes some confusion. You see, it's not a number. It's easier to understand if instead of using the word infinity, we use the word that it comes from, the word infinite. Infinite means something with no end, something that has no stopping point. Now, there aren't a lot of things in our lives that have no end, no stopping point. But counting, or numbers, is one of those things. There's no end to how many numbers there are. You can always keep counting. Think about it like this. If someone tries to challenge you by saying they can think of the biggest number ever, you can just challenge them right back by adding 1. 1,000,000, 1,000,001. 1,billion, 1,billion,001. Each time you add 1 more, that's a bigger number. So infinity isn't the biggest number because there really is no such thing as the biggest number, since you can always keep counting. You can always add 1 more number. That said, just because we can keep counting forever doesn't mean we have names for every number. We tend to only have names for numbers that we actually use. Million, billion, and trillion are all huge numbers. there aren't a lot of things you bump into that are these numbers. When we're talking about 1 million, you're at a number that's like the number of pizzas eaten every hour in the United States. That's a lot of pizzas. 1 billion? It's even bigger. Now that's more like how many pizzas are eaten every year. If you want to get a sense of just how big 1 billion is, check out the episode we did called How Many People Are in the World? Even so, these aren't the biggest numbers we have a name for. The winner of biggest number we have a name for, some would say, are you ready for this? It's the number Google. You heard me right, Google. Not the internet company, though they're named after the number, just spelled differently. There's really a number called Google. If it sounds like a little kid made up that name, that's because they did. About 100 years ago, a mathematician, someone who studies math and numbers, decided that he would like to give a name to the number 1 with 100 zeros after it. He asked his 9-year-old nephew for advice. He said, "What do you think we should call it?" The nephew said, "I don't know, how about Google?" And amazingly, that name has stuck. It's not a number that comes up very often, but it is officially considered the name of the number 1 with 100 zeros after it. So in summary, there is no biggest number because numbers just keep going on forever. You can always keep counting. But we do have names for some really big numbers, not just million, billion, and trillion, but even numbers as big as Google. That's all for this week's question. Thanks, Avon, for asking it. Before you vote.
Okay, boys and girls, so let's look at our questions for today. So again, this lesson was on what is the biggest number, and your 2 questions, which again, just like the last video, you can either discuss with people at your house or you can write down the response. If you need to rewatch the video, you can. So the first question is infinity the biggest number? So think about what the video said. Is infinity in fact the biggest number? What did Doug say about that? And the second question, just for fun to see if you remember, how many pizzas are eaten by the US each hour? Doug mentioned that, so think about how much did he say? How many pizzas were eaten each hour in the US? Okay, see you for the next video.